the church in Constantinople, the middle of the 9th century was the start of intensive missionary activity. Restricted by the Oriental Orthodox churches and the rise of Islam to the east, and by increasingly strained relations with the Roman Latin Church to the west, Patriarch Photius the Great dispatched 2 Greeks to the north to convert the Slavic peoples. Cyril and Methodius, brothers from Thessaloniki, took Christianity outside the comfortable boundaries of the Byzantine Empire and into an alien environment. Cyril and Methodius were determined to establish a native ministry. They developed a special alphabet from the Greek to translate the gospel and write service books in Slavonic. The written culture of the Slavs was born, allowing Slavic civilization to prosper. The Slavs were Christianized and civilized at the same time. They were given a fully articulated Christian doctrine in their own language and a fully developed Christian civilization. As a result, churches in Bulgaria, Serbia, and eventually in Romania and Russia thrived within natural national boundaries. For instance, in 927, less than a full century since Slavs first heard the gospel, the Bulgarian Orthodox Church was recognized by Constantinople as an independent, autocephalous patriarchate.
In 988, Russia officially became a Christian state with the conversion of Vladimir, ruler of Kiev. By that time, all the powerful states surrounding Kiev had abandoned paganism and adopted some form of monotheism. Vladimir wanted to do the same, so he sent envoys abroad to observe the rituals of Islam, Roman Catholicism, and Orthodoxy. The envoys were overwhelmed by the beauty of the Greek Orthodox rites they witnessed in the church of Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. When they returned to Kiev and gave their report, Vladimir decided to adopt the Byzantine form of Christianity and decreed that all his subjects be baptized in that faith. Few people have accepted the Orthodox faith with as much devotion as the Slavs. Their conversion was a pivotal event in their social growth and cultural progress.
With the turn of the 5th century, a succession of developments triggered the total collapse of political unity in the Mediterranean world. First, the empire was once more divided, this time permanently, into separate realms. The Byzantine East, centered in Constantinople, the Latin West in Rome, each with its own emperor. Soon after, barbarians, wave after wave of Germanic tribes, Goths, Vandals, and Franks, invaded from the north to carve out the once proud western half of the Roman Empire into so many separate feudal kingdoms. The last remnants of political solidarity between Greek-speaking East and Latin West were destroyed, never to be restored. During the reign of Justinian in the 6th century, while the West was still divided and in a constant state of conflict, the Byzantine Empire was rising to the height of its glory. Constantinople gained both prominence and influence. Justinian's gift to the world, the Church of Hagia Sophia in Constantinople, is perhaps the ultimate expression of Byzantine symphonia, a unique harmony between church and state. On the one hand, an imperial church attending to matters divine, guarding the state. On the other hand, a Christian empire presiding over mortals as protector of the church to preserve the faith. In such an environment, the Bishop of Constantinople, by tradition direct successor of Andrew, the first apostle of Christ and founder of the Church of Byzantium, assumed the title of ecumenical patriarch. He came to be recognized as spokesman and spiritual leader for Eastern Orthodoxy. Rome, based on ecumenical canon, objected, but to no avail. Political power and prestige had decisively shifted to the East.
In the East, bishops of many local churches legitimately claimed a direct, unbroken apostolic succession. No less than 4 of them had been elevated by ecumenical council decree to prominent honorary status. Consequently, Eastern Orthodoxy evolved as a decentralized affiliation of co-equal bishops, subscribing to decision by consensus under the protection of a single, strong, secular head, the Emperor of Byzantium. On the other hand, in the West, in an unstable political environment, Rome alone could claim an apostolic foundation. As a result, the Ecclesia, or Church of Rome, developed a centralized structure. Slowly, religious as well as secular authority was concentrated in the office of the Pope, the Bishop of Rome.
Linguistic obstacles compounded the problem, making communication even more complex and difficult. By the 7th century, very few in the West could read Greek, and although Byzantium still called itself the Roman Empire, it was a rare Byzantine who knew Latin, the language of the Romans. With the advent of Islam in the 7th and 8th centuries, the Mediterranean fell under Arab control, and cultural and commercial contacts between Rome and the prominent seats of Eastern patriarchates started to deteriorate. Cut off from Byzantium and the Eastern Mediterranean, the West proceeded to establish a new Holy Roman Empire of its own, independent and emancipated from the Byzantines. To that effect, at the onset of the 9th century, the Pope crowned a new emperor, Charlemagne. Supported by a succession of popes, Charlemagne, former king of the Franks, attacked the legitimacy of the Eastern Empire in an attempt to take sole control of the Christian world and thus restore the empire in the West. The stage was set for an open conflict. The pretext for the confrontation, known as the Phottian Schism, was the encounter of Orthodox and German missionaries among the Slavs. But its roots ran far deeper. The fundamental difference between East and West lay in assorted matters of ecumenical dogma and canon. Two key issues in particular.
The first issue was the Roman understanding of papal primacy in the affairs of the Church. Rome openly asserted its claims of jurisdictional supremacy in the middle of the 9th century. Pope Nicholas I tried to intervene in the internal affairs of the Byzantine Church by ordering the deposition of Patriarch Photius the Great and the restoration of Patriarch Ignatius to the throne of Constantinople. At about the same time, the convergence of missionary activity among the Slavs in the plains of Eastern Europe brought to the surface the second issue, a long, dormant controversy over the Filioque.
The Nicene Creed had clearly defined the Holy Spirit as the Lord, the giver of life, who proceeds from the Father, who together with the Father and the Son is worshipped and glorified. But the Latin West unilaterally added a phrase to read, who proceeds from the Father and from the Son, in Latin Filioque, disturbing the balance of the Holy Trinity as defined by the first two ecumenical councils.
Saint Photius the Great, a widely acclaimed scholar, regarded as one of the towering figures of Orthodoxy, was eventually restored to the Patriarchate. Although Photius had played a key role in the growth of tension between East and West, during his second term of office, he entered into a reconciliation with Rome. It was at best, however, a fragile peace. In less than 100 years, following minor incidental conflicts, Cardinal Humbert, a high-ranking representative from Rome, placed a stamp of excommunication on the altar of Hagia Sophia at Constantinople, prompting the Orthodox Church to respond with anathemas of its own. This action marks what is commonly accepted as the beginning of the Great Schism. It was the year 1054 AD. However, some level of friendly relations was in fact maintained, as men of good conscience on both sides continued to hope that the gap separating them could be bridged. History proved differently. Of all things, the Crusades, organized and launched by the Holy Roman Empire to liberate the regions of the Eastern Christian Empire from the occupation of the Arabs, ultimately sealed the schism. On their fourth campaign, the year 1204, the Crusaders sacked Constantinople.